Mortgage foreclosures are in focus today in a new report from the congressional panel that oversees the government's $700 billion TARP plan. According to the report, 1 in 8 mortgages is currently in foreclosure or default, and says TARP measures aren't doing enough to solve the problem. Well, the chair of the congressional oversight panel joins us now from Washington, and Professor Elizabeth Warren is with us. Professor, thanks very much for joining us and seeing you, and it's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you.
Okay, I was reading through the executive summary in this report, which is about 160 pages long, and you note that the size and the scope of this mortgage program just appears to be not big enough to really save Americans from foreclosures or mass foreclosures. So the price tag right now, I believe, is about $50 billion. How much more do you think it will take?
Well, we don't know. In fact, we haven't spent the money that's in the program right now because we're not sure that the 500,000 families that have gotten into the front end of the program can make it all the way through the program. So we really have problems here of design, whether or not we've got a program that's aimed in the right direction, of scalability, whether or not we can take it to the right size, and then permanence, whether or not the people who make it into the system, in fact, have really solved their foreclosure problem, or whether they're likely to end up back in foreclosure in another 2 or 3 years.
And Professor, I just want to read you one quote from one of the members, the Republican members of the panel, Jeb Hensarling, the congressman from Texas. And this is what he had to say about the findings. He said, instead of focusing its attention on taxpayer protection and oversight, the panel's majority report implies that the administration should commit additional taxpayer funds in hopes of helping distressed homeowners, both deserving and undeserving, with a taxpayer-subsidized rescue. I want to get your response to that because I think it's very key. Undeserving. I think a lot of Republicans feel that why should they bail out, or why should American taxpayers bail out those who are underwater in their mortgages if they purposely did that to themselves?
Well, you know, I totally get it. I mean, why did we bail out banks that had done it to themselves? Partly we do these things because we're worried about the larger economy. You know, Congressman Hensarling and our other Republican member asked that we have an independent cost-benefit analysis conducted, and that's what we did. And what it showed was that when we can spend dollars on mortgage foreclosure prevention, we can stop a lot of other losses down the road. Remember, mortgage foreclosures now are no longer just about the family who gets pushed out of the home. Mortgage foreclosures are about the neighbors whose property values decline, about $5,000 on average for every foreclosure. They're about the lenders themselves who are losing about $120,000 on every foreclosure. And here comes the real kicker. Thanks to Fannie, Freddie, the FHA, the American taxpayer often is in the position of guaranteeing these foreclosed mortgages. So what we're really looking at here is a question, it's the larger economic question. How is it that we can deal with foreclosures in the most cost-effective manner? I think that's what it is that we all want here.
Right, and that may be expanding or extending this program, but where do you draw the line, Professor? Because if you do, it's hard to differentiate between deserving and undeserving, but also, then what about on the other side? What about the banks that made those mortgages? Where do you draw the line in terms of helping them?
You know, you've said it exactly right. You've got the problem of the deserving and the undeserving homeowners. And let's be clear, exactly as you said, some people took the risks, some people were just too optimistic, and some people really were cheated. They thought they were buying a 30-year fixed, and in fact they were, you know, in a teaser rate mortgage. They never understood the hidden fees and tricks and traps. The same thing is true on the mortgage lender side. There are some who thought they were engaging in sensible transactions, and others who knew that they were selling mortgages that were never going to survive. So we can spend all of our time trying to sort this out, or while the economy continues to go down. You know, the problem we've got now is that the housing market is so deeply intertwined with jobs in the construction industry, in furniture industry, in hardware stores, in the assets that are held on the books of the banks, that we can't simply wall it off and say, you know, this is just going to have to sort itself out. We really are presented with a crisis that threatens the entire economy.
Okay.
And so what the panel is asking for is an effective plan to just step back and take care of it, and take care of it quickly.
Okay, Professor Warren, thank you so much for joining us. That was Professor Elizabeth Warren of the TARP Oversight Panel.